and its members cannot have any influence on the decision-making process. We consider it is very important for Ukraine to be represented at the Hague Summit and be part of its success, both in the form of personal presence of Volodymyr Zelensky and in the summit's strong decisions. We all want to send the right signals of unity, strength, and resilience. And this will bring peace closer and strengthen global security architecture. A just, comprehensive, and sustainable peace in Ukraine is its precondition and cornerstone. Dear partners, real peace needs strength, joint American and European strengths. I am proud to remind you that already at the time of the Dayton process, Ukraine made its strong contribution to peace in Europe, with our own boots on the ground, a very professional and dedicated military contingent in Bosnia and Herzegovina and then Kosovo. In July 1995, Ukrainian peace contingent saved thousands of people in the village of Zhepa. Our soldiers stood firmly for peace and the lives of civilians under the threat of being killed. 4 months later, the Dayton Peace Accords were signed to end the bloody war and bring back peace to Europe. Dear friends, we are now just a month before the crucial NATO summit in The Hague. So let's make sure that the summit and its agenda is tuned accordingly to key security challenges we need to address. Let's make sure that we are united, committed, and ready to act. That's why I am happy that the NATO Secretary General is with us today. Dear Mark, thank you for your work and engagement. We all rely on you. I want to thank you, Sir Alec Shelbrook, the Vice President of the Assembly, and the President Markos Peresтрелло for initiating and supporting the very strong declaration, Peace Through Strength in Ukraine. It is important that the declaration be adopted today and its contents implemented. There is no more time to delay. Let's act together. Thank you for your attention.
Minister ΣΥΠΙΓΑ, we thank you for your remarks and to assure you that the NATO Parliamentary Assembly remains fully squarely behind supporting Ukraine for a safe, long-lasting and just peace. Thank you. Okay, dear colleagues, it's now time to welcome the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutте.
Thank you, Markos, and also thank you, Andriy, for your incredible leadership in Ukraine. And I think it was very important to have that address today to this important gathering. And thank you to Майка Тернера and the whole US team for the warm welcome to Dayton. First, I want to pay tribute to Jerry Connolly. He was a powerful advocate for our great alliance, a champion of the transatlantic bond, and a fearless defender of the democratic values we hold dear. We met a couple of times, first when I was Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and then twice in my present role. And I have the best of memories of these encounters. And I can tell you, also in private, he could be very forceful. Let us honor his memory by continuing to stand strong and united in NATO. Despite these sad circumstances, it is a pleasure to join you this session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly and to celebrate your 70th anniversary, 70th, 70. The MPA promotes peace, security and democracy, strengthens transatlantic cooperation and builds understanding about our great alliance. You reinforce the bond between NATO and our democratic societies. You have my admiration and deepest thanks. I'm so pleased that we are meeting in Dayton, a great city in the great state of Ohio. And I was delighted to learn about the Dayton Dutch Lions, a local football team, or I suppose you in the United States would say soccer. The Dutch philosophy for the beautiful game is all about strategic thinking, adaptability, and strong teamwork. Today, I want to share with you how we are going to build a better NATO. At the summit in The Hague next month, Allied leaders will take decisions to make NATO a stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance. Because we live in a more dangerous world, and this is a critical moment for our security, with multiple threats and challenges. There is Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, the threat of terrorism, intense global competition, and flashpoints around the world, from the Middle East to Asia. Russia has teamed up with China, North Korea and Iran. They are expanding their militaries and their capabilities. They are preparing for long-term confrontation. I'm struck by the speech Winston Churchill made in the House of Commons in 1936, when he asked the question, will there be time to put our defenses in order? Will there be time to make these necessary efforts? Or will the awful words, too late, be recorded? Peace fails when there's complacency, when threats go unanswered, and when preparations are put off. We must take action now and build up our defenses. To delay is dangerous. To make NATO stronger, we must increase defense spending. That underpins everything. Allies will have to invest much more to meet new capability targets, which NATO defense ministers will agree in Brussels next week. We need more resources, forces and capabilities so that we are prepared to face any threat and to implement our collective defense plans in full. Most allies, if not all, are due to reach the initial aim of spending 2% of GDP on defense this year. And many have already announced plans to go much further. We know that the 2% pledge, agreed way back in 2014, just doesn't cut it anymore. So, in 2025, we are finalizing a plan to dramatically increase defense spending across the alliance. This plan will mean more money for our core military requirements, hard defense, and more money for defense-related investments, including infrastructure and resilience. I'm working closely with Allied leaders as we prepare for the formal decisions at the summit in The Hague. As parliamentarians, I need your help to make the case for higher defense spending with the public and to encourage your governments to keep up with their commitments. And I know the debates about investing more in defense will be difficult in some parliaments. And each of you will have an important role in building support to get budgets approved. So I need, and NATO needs, your support. As well as more defense spending, we need more defense production. NATO's aim is to enhance and expand the industrial base right across the alliance. We are committed to increasing defense production, fostering innovation and removing barriers to cooperation. The summit in The Hague will send a clear demand signal to industry. And we need industry to meet our ambition. Increased defense production is not just good for our security, it is good for our economies too. And I also expect allies will spend more and better together on critical capabilities for our armed forces. NATO must become stronger, fairer and more lethal. To make NATO fairer, we will rebalance the burden of our security, with all allies contributing their fair share. We all benefit enormously from the protection our transatlantic alliance provides. But it is vital that every member of this alliance is pulling their weight. And I'm encouraged to see Europe and Canada stepping up with more defense spending. A strong transatlantic alliance is good for Europe and good for the United States. Becoming more lethal means strengthening our deterrence and defense posture and providing our militaries with what they need to keep us safe, so that no potential aggressor has any doubt about our resolve. Rest assured, we will always be a defensive alliance. But to protect our way of life, we will always do whatever it takes to prevent any aggression against us. And if anyone dares to attack us, our resolve will be absolute. To preserve peace, we must prepare for war. Let us not ignore the lessons of history. Dayton knows that peace can prevail. It was here in 1995 that the brutal Bosnian War was brought to an end. The Dayton Agreement laid the foundation for peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina. NATO has supported peace and stability there and right across the Western Balkans for 30 years. Our commitment remains just as strong today. But above all, it is the people and politicians of Bosnia and Herzegovina and throughout the region that must deliver progress. The Western Balkans has shown that peace is possible. But today, Europe is not at peace. Russia has brought war back to Europe. Its aggression against Ukraine must stop, and it must stop now. I completely condemn Russia's indiscriminate attacks against innocent civilians over the last 48 hours. We fully support President Trump's urgent efforts to stop the fighting. We need a just and lasting peace. This is a priority that we all share. Thank you. NATO will continue our long-term support to Ukraine. And this is not about prolonging the war, it is about ensuring Ukraine can defend itself now and prevent any future aggression. NATO's command in Germany is leading the coordination of security assistance and training for Ukraine, delivering critical aid daily and helping build its future force. And our new center in Poland is helping us all learn the lessons from the war. So far, allies pledged more than 20 billion euros in additional security assistance for Ukraine this year. And through the coalition of the willing, led by the United Kingdom and France, NATO allies have shown they are ready, willing and able to take more responsibility to help secure peace when the time comes. NATO has stood with Ukraine from the beginning. We stand with Ukraine today, and we will stand with Ukraine throughout the challenges ahead. We know that even when the war against Ukraine ends, the threats we face will persist. Our adversaries will still try to dominate and divide us. They will fail because of the unbreakable transatlantic bond, North America and Europe standing together to secure peace through strength. A stronger, fairer and more lethal alliance is how we stay safe in a more dangerous world. 1 billion people on both sides of the Atlantic are counting on us. Let us rise to the challenge and stand stronger together in NATO. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. We now come to questions. Thank you thank you for being here with us and take some time. I must warn you that we already have a large number of questions, several dozens of them. It is highly unlikely that we will be able to go through all of them, but we'll do our best. I will set a 1 minute time limit for questions. I will ask you to respect this limit so that we can get more questions. We will follow our usual procedure. We will join groups of 3 questions, and we will start immediately with the question for Майка Тернера, the head of the American delegation. Please, Mike, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for being here. It's important that you interface with the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. The legislative function is important as we look to NATO's policies. They have to be adopted, both budgets and policies in the legislatures. So thank you for honoring us by being here. You've recently made a statement about Russia's efforts to put a nuclear anti-satellite weapon into space. I believe that weapon should never be permitted to go into space. This is, I think, the Cuban Missile Crisis in space. Your bringing attention to it is incredibly important. It would destabilize, I think, all of our efforts, both militarily and commercial satellites in space. It would, if it was detonated, wipe out low Earth orbit, perhaps up to a year. It has been testified before the U.S. Congress. Thank you for bringing the attention to that. I think collectively as an alliance we need to make this a priority. I'd love your additional thoughts on that.
Now, please, Mikko Savola, Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. And thank you for your leadership. Right now, NATO, and particularly its European pillar, is addressing the right priorities. We must strengthen Ukraine's and Europe's defense, ramp up our defense industry, and train more troops. We must spend more on defense and take greater responsibility for our own security. We must also correct the past mistakes. That's why Finland is withdrawing from the Ottawa Convention, and we have heard similar voices from Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. In a wartime situation, we must have every tool available to stop an enemy coming from the east. But my question to you, Mr. Secretary General, concerns the reinforcement of the NATO's eastern flank. What plans does NATO have to strengthen the entire eastern border of Europe, and how will the alliance ensure that the European countries remain committed to increasing their defense capabilities in line with NATO's objectives?
Thank you, Mikko. And the final question of this group, Agnes Vadai from Hungary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Fake news and malign influence on our societies and citizens from our adversaries have become more and more intensive in recent months. Their aim is very clear: to undermine the basic and shared values of our liberal democracies. Our great and beloved friend, the late Jerry Connolly, proposed to set up a Center for Democratic Resilience. Up until this center is established in NATO HQ, which we hope is going to happen very soon, what toolkit does NATO can offer to member states and the citizens of NATO to protect themselves and our commonly shared values from these attacks? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that first round of 3 questions. So, to Mike Turner, I will absolutely keep on pressing that point. I think it is extremely relevant. It is also about weaponizing beyond, almost literally beyond our borders. And we have to also be aware collectively of the impact it would have strategically on all of us in NATO, but of course also beyond. So this is even bigger than our alliance. So you can count on me that I will keep on pressing that point. And thank you so much for your leadership and also for making clear that this is also of importance to the United States and to you personally. When it comes to the eastern flank, obviously, and this is to Mikko's question from Finland, clearly we have to do more there. First of all, we have to make sure that our 8 forward land forces are fully staffed and equipped, and of course a 9th in Finland, hopefully we will have soon, and then we will have next to Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Slovakia, and of course Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia, and Poland. We would have our 9th forward land force. That would be very important. So one is to make sure they are fully staffed, etc. We know that Germany has now built up its presence in Lithuania, is building up its presence in Lithuania to a full brigade level, so that is very positive. But there's more to this, because at the same time, these 9 countries, of course, and all of us, all 32, but also these 9 countries on the, who are basically on the eastern flank, they're rapidly building up their own armed forces. We know that at this moment in the 3 Baltic countries and Poland have committed to defense spending close to, and in some cases even over 5%. And this is the hard defense spending they're talking about. That means that we will have more forces, more ready at the level we need them from these countries themselves as a first line of defense. So that's the second layer. The third layer is that we have to make sure that when it comes to all the strategic plans in NATO, that whenever Putin would try something silly, like attacking a part of NATO territory, he has to understand that our reaction will be devastating. And to be devastating, it means that we have to be able to implement and make happen all the plans we have, including all the backup plans, etc., etc. And that is why 8 countries now committing to 2% this year, 6, 7 already there. I think we will all have all 8 countries who were not yet at 2% this year. And then, of course, agreeing in The Hague to a new target for hard defense spending, which will be considerably north of 2%. I would think the hard spending even north of 3%. And then committing to the defense-related spending, as I mentioned. This is the third layer, to make sure that we have all our plans staffed and capable and able and trained, so that whenever something happens, we are able to defend the eastern flank. And then finally, to all the others in the room, I still hear in NATO, and here you can help, from countries who are not in the eastern flank, yes, but we are not at the eastern flank. So for us it is less relevant. The difference between Finland and a country like, let's say, Spain or Italy or the Netherlands or the United Kingdom, we are all on the eastern flank, because with the latest missile technology out of Russia, the difference is 5 minutes for these latest missiles to come to us with 5 times the sound of speed, and still very difficult to be taken out by our existing anti-missile defense system. So let's not kid ourselves. All of us, all 32, we are on the eastern flank, not only Finland and the other 8 countries. No, we all are basically geographically located on the eastern flank. We really have to get that mentality ingrained in NATO. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Agnes,
Agnes, sorry. Of course. Well, you know, when it comes to this initiative by Jerry, and when I mentioned that he could be quite forceful, also in one-on-ones, this was one of the subjects we discussed. As you know, allies have not reached consensus on the proposal, so that's just a fact. But you also know that democracy, rule of law, individual liberty, they are the core values at the heart of NATO. And that means that NATO policies are informed by these principles. This is what differentiates us, stands us apart from Russia, from China, from North Korea, from Iran, and from other countries who want to harm us. And of course, NATO already has, luckily, existing structures for allies to uphold these core principles. But when it comes completely, as you know, to the center, there we have to, as a statement of fact, come to the conclusion that there is no consensus. But thank you for the question, and let's collectively keep on working on this principle.
Thank you, Mark. We have now another set of 3 questions from Fernando Gutierrez from Spain, Derek Twig from the UK, and Natalia Poussiret from France. Fernando, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for your remarks. I'm here, so thank you. In the European Union White Paper for Defence, the Union establishes a set of priorities in capability gaps to be covered that start by the air defence, long-range ammunition, long-range artillery, ammunition and missiles, drones and anti-drones, etc. However, several EU member states that they are as well NATO members prefer to put the effort in different capabilities such more based in new technologies such as cyber defense, space-based intelligence or command and control. First question is, do you agree with the European Union set of priorities in the order it's established in that paper? And second, in this diversity of approaches from different countries, which should be, in your opinion, the limit to that diversity, or in other words, how we should harmonize these approaches in order to be efficient and credible in terms of defense and deterrence? Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Derek Twig from the UK.
Thank you very much. I think it'd just be useful to hear more from the Secretary-General on what will count as a successful NATO summit next month. But my specific question is, can he say more on what he believes are the
Derek, please raise your hand so that there is, you see now, it's right in front of you.
Okay, start again. Good morning. I would be interested to hear from the Secretary-General about what he thinks will count as a successful NATO summit next month. But my specific question is, can you say more on what you believe are the further concrete steps we need to take to accelerate the growth of our defence industrial base, including how NATO countries can better cooperate to increase interoperability?
Thank you. Natalia Poussiret-France, s'il vous plaît.
Merci. I will speak in French, so please use your headset.
NATO Secretary General, today Ukraine's army is fighting for the security of its country and its people. Tomorrow, Ukraine's army will remain a shield against Russia and make a key contribution to Euro-Atlantic collective security. Assuming Ukraine will not be demilitarized, what are the guarantees that NATO want to provide to rebuilding the Ukrainian army? To what extent can we trust that there will be support for maintenance and logistics? How will the Allies continue to support bolstering the Ukrainian army in the long term? Thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So let me start then with the question from Spain, Fernando Gutierrez. And here I think sometimes things are easy, sometimes. Because in NATO we have, and this was established some time ago and really reinforced by my predecessor, Jens Stoltenberg, we have this system of the NATO defense planning process, and we will, at the 5th of June, when we have our defense ministers meeting, agree on the capability targets. And all allies already on an individual basis have said we agree with the targets we have basically been exposed to. And indeed, you mentioned already some that will mean more maneuverable land formations, long-range missiles, air defense systems, logistics, and obviously ammunition, refilling our stockpiles. And this will help us because from the capability targets, we can assess the gaps immediately. Sometimes the gaps are there because many countries were not at 2%, but even the countries at 2% will have a gap to reach the capability targets, and that will inform us to a large part what has to be the new defense spending target. And this is why I assume that in The Hague we will agree on a hard defense spend target of in total 5%. Sorry, I would not mention that, but at least I did it now. But let's say that it's 5%. But I will not say what is the individual breakup, but it will be considerably north of 3% when it comes to the hard spend, and it will be also a target on defense-related spending. We need this because otherwise we can never, ever reach the capability targets we have to reach. And then there is the distinction between us and the European Union. The European Union And we are working very closely together with Ursula von der Leyen, with Kaja Kallas, with Commissioner Kubilius, but also with Roberta Metsola, who was here. I just met her in the airport last night, here at this NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and of course with Antonio Costa. So we are really working together as one, where the EU is focusing very much on all the issues to do with the internal market, getting the defence industrial base going, making sure that the 27 work together. And here we have to particularly make sure that whatever the EU is doing is also as much as possible accessible for countries like Norway, the United Kingdom, Turkey, but also the United States, Canada and other NATO allies not in the European Union. So there is a clear distinction, a clear division of labour between the EU and NATO. We all realize this, and of course it helps that Ursula von der Leyen, the President of the Commission, was herself a defence minister in Germany before. So everyone's saying that the new defence spending targets have to be anchored in facts and reality is right, and we will do that because it will all flow from one, the capability targets being agreed by the defence ministers, therefore an assessment of the gaps. Second, this realization that we have to equalize with our biggest ally, the United States. They are totally committed to NATO, but have also this expectation that we will equalize in terms of the overall defense spending. And thirdly, the realization that Russia is reconstituting itself at a pace which is staggering. When you look at some of the open sources out of our intelligence services, we see in the media from Germany, from other countries, some will say in 3 years they are able to attack us, some are saying in 5 years, others say in 7 years. So somewhere between 3 and 7 years we have to be ready. We are able to defend ourselves now, but we also have to be able to defend ourselves between 3 and 7 years from now. So thank you for that question, and it is really important. In Wales in 2014, the 2% was a bit like this. Let's do 2%. The new hard defense target and the overall defense spending target when it comes to the hard spend and the defense-related spend has to be anchored in facts, and it will be the equalization, the build-up of Russia, but first and foremost the capability targets we will agree. Then on the question from the United Kingdom, from Derek, on a successful NATO summit. One, agreeing the spending. This is really absolutely goal number one. It will project a NATO which is reinvigorated, which is standing proud at the world stage, which is able to defend itself now and in the future. And with the biggest ally knowing that the Europeans and Canada will spend what they are spending in terms of the overall money involved. And that's, I think, crucial for our, to be a fair alliance, so to say, also going forward. Secondly, it has to be about, as you said, about the defense industry. The problem with our defense industry is that we have fantastic companies, but they are not really producing nearly enough what we need. Particularly in ammunition, we are now producing in a year what Russia is producing in 3 months. And we is NATO. And NATO is including the US. That is a 50 trillion economy. The US and all the other 31 allies coupled together. A 50 trillion economy. Russia is only 2 trillion, so 25 times smaller. And they produce 4 times more in ammunition than we are producing. This is completely unsustainable. We cannot defend ourselves if we would not develop at a huge speed our defense industrial base. So this will be the second big outcome of The Hague. And of course, Ukraine, very important, making sure, depending on where we are in 4 weeks with Ukraine, that we will do whatever is necessary to keep them in the fight and to bring Ukraine to a lasting and durable peace. But on this defense industrial question, I mean, this is really the thing which is keeping me awake at night. I think we will get to the new defense target. I think we will get it because there is large-scale support. But when it comes to defense industry, this is the hard part. We have to get this going. If not, we lack a serious part of our overall deterrence against the Russians, Iran, North Korea and China. China is now rapidly ramping up its defense spending and production. They have now more ships sailing than the US. They will have by the end of the decade 1,000 nuclear warheads. So please make sure, and all of you can help here. We have fantastic defense industrial companies, but they have to put in the extra production lines, they have to put in the extra shifts, They will always ask for 10-year contracts. We cannot deliver them. Look at the US system. The US system works from year to year. Most European countries work from election cycle to election cycle. But they will know by the 5th of June the targets. They will know by the end of June the money available. So they are businessmen and women. Make them, please help them to make the necessary investments and to keep us safe. And then on Ukraine, this is really important, because NSETU, the command in Wiesbaden, was set up not only to help Ukraine now, to have the best packaging of all the defense industrial support they are getting from allies, but also longer term to make sure that we build up the Ukrainian armed forces as a first layer of defense going forward after a potential long-term ceasefire slash a peace deal. Let's hope we will get there as soon as possible. But then we have to make sure there's a first layer there ready to do that. And of course then we have other initiatives. I mentioned the French-British initiative, the Coalition of the Willing. There are other initiatives to make sure that next, let's say, on top of the Ukrainian armed forces themselves, we collectively will support Ukraine after a peace deal to make sure that there is no repeat of Minsk, that Putin will never ever try again to capture 1 square kilometer, 1 square mile of Ukraine. But the first layer of this, exactly to your point, is building up the Ukrainian armed forces.
Thank you. We have a new set of 3 questions from Lorenzo Cesa from Italy, Maria Lisa Follers from Germany, and Hugo Patricio Oliveira from Portugal. Lorenzo, please.
Grazie, Presidente. I speak in Italian. No? Grazie,
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Thank you for the very hard job you have been carrying out. The Italian delegation asked to insert in the draft declaration a paragraph to draw attention at the Hague Summit on the need to improve understanding, our people's understanding about the scope, about the goals, the values, the policies and priorities of the alliance, and this is very much needed in order to counter disinformation which depicts NATO as an offensive alliance. We know this is not the case. We are a tool for peace. This is important, not just for the countries which want to join NATO. Their public opinions don't know exactly what the real nature of NATO is. I would like to know what the Secretary General, the Secretariat General does in general in this regard. We have to work together. We are parliamentarians, so the relationship with parliamentarians is essential, and we can give a hand in order to explain what NATO's reasons are.
Lisa Wohlers from Germany.
Dear Mr. President, dear Secretary General, thank you for joining us. I'm over here. Here. What is your concrete vision for burden shifting to a more European-led NATO? How can US and European allies, legitimate but seemingly contradictory interests be balanced and a suitable compromise be found? Can this be achieved within ongoing NATO processes?
Danke. Hugo Patricio Oliveira, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your remarks. My question is related to NATO Southern Neighborhood. In the run-up to the Hague Summit, how do you assess the development of NATO Southern Neighborhood Action Plan for the South? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, to the question of Lorenzo Cesa. Of course, this is essential. This is about not letting ourselves being diverted and distracted by what others think we are. We are a defensive alliance. We know that to prevent war, we have to spend more. And we know that to prevent war, we have to prepare for war. That doesn't mean that we are an offensive alliance. No, we are a defensive alliance. There's nobody in NATO who wants to attack any other country. There's absolutely no interest of doing that. And it was the Russian federation under its current leader, whatever you call him, Vladimir Putin, who has decided to invade Ukraine and to have this, this increasingly belligerent rhetoric against NATO, and working together with North Korea. And we know that North Korea is getting a lot of technology in return for their support for Russia's war in Ukraine. We know that China is a key enabler of that war by delivering dual-use goods, sanctions circumvention, and what more. And we know, of course, that Iran is involved, and Iran gets money from the Russians, and they use that money to stir up divisions in the Middle East. So these four are working together. We should not be naive about it, but we are a defensive alliance. We are the strongest a defense alliance in world history, and we have to make sure by the decisions we make in The Hague for the long term, the next 25 years, we will stay the strongest defense alliance in world history, and that's our collective endeavor over the next 4 weeks, but also beyond the Hague summit to implement everything, particularly, as I said before, to the UK question on defense industrial production. So I need your help, but we also should stay a little bit cool under this, and a bit like the British Queen, keep calm and carry on, even when some of our adversaries are giving all these signals that we would be offensive. Here we are not. That's absolutely clear. Then on the burden shifting, to Marja-Liisa Vuller's question, here, of course, this is already happening. Let's first start by acknowledging that the United States is not only involved in NATO for historical reasons. The United States realizes that to stay safe, they need a secure Atlantic, they need a secure Arctic, and they need a secure Europe. That is of a vital, direct interest to the defense and security of this country long term. So that's why we work together. Of course, there was a mistake, you could say, after the First World War, and we know the famous speech Churchill delivered here in the United States, Christmas '41, a couple of weeks after Pearl Harbor, where he basically said in a very subtle way, let's not repeat that mistake of getting disengaged from Europe, because the long arm of history will then reach out again to the new world to come to the defense of the old. So there's that reason. But again, when it comes to the long-term security of the US, it is a secure Atlantic, Arctic, and Europe. So there is an absolute mutual interest to do this. But we also know that the US, being the biggest power in the world and being the biggest economy in the world, has more issues to think of than only the Euro-Atlantic theater. And that's why the burden shifting is taking place, and rightly so. At this moment, the US is about delivering 44% of all the capabilities of NATO. That will come down by 2032 to 30%. And that means that the non-US allies are stepping up from 56% to 70%. And then with the extra money spent, we can take over more of that if necessary, because we know that the US gradually will want to pivot more towards Asia, etc. But still keeping a very large conventional presence in Europe. So I'm pretty confident that we can do this. I have very good discussions with Pete Hegseth in the Pentagon, with Marco Rubio, with President Trump, and I'm really confident that over the next month and the next 9 months, 12 months, we will really be able to steer this whole process, spending more, making sure we stay together as an alliance, but also enabling the US to pivot more towards other problems they have to attend to, which is basically only logical. And then on the southern neighborhood, we are working very hard. Of course, we have a special representative for the southern neighborhood now, Mr. Colomina. We have he's even my special representative, Secretary General, special representative for the southern neighborhood, and he is doing a fantastic job. And we will open the office in Jordan. Of course, we have the NATO mission in Iraq, which I visited in February, doing marvelous work there to help Iraq develop its security forces and its defense capabilities, also longer term. And of course, we are there on their request, but they highly value our presence and what we are doing. And we have, at this moment, I think in total over 600, and that will probably that number will grow a little bit over the coming months and years, of our allies being active in Iraq, helping them. But then we are also now working with other countries, with Mauritania, for example. And we had a very good meeting between the ambassadors in the NEC in Brussels, together with the ambassadors from Egypt, Mauritania, Tunisia, others, to really discuss how we can take the next steps when it comes to the southern neighborhood. And why? Because we cannot have China and Russia gaining more and more influence in that part of the world, which is so close to us and therefore vital to our interests. And this is exactly the point your Prime Minister made, the Prime Minister of Spain made, the Prime Minister of Italy made, and others over the last 1.5 and 2 years. And that's why we are really stepping up when it comes to the southern neighborhood, and I'm completely committed.
Thank you. The next questions will be asked by Jesse Clever from the Netherlands, Daria Safai from Belgium, and Joanna Kluzic-Rostowska from Poland. Jesse, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, President. Good to see you here. Mark, I know you have some troubles with your vision, so we're sitting here. You yourself has been a member of Parliament and head of government for quite a long time, and you've experienced in your own how difficult it can be for politicians to decide on more defense spending. How do you reflect on your time in office, and what have you learned, and what are the lessons you can give to us to be successful in meeting the spending obligation, as I would say, not a spending target, but a spending obligation, than most of us were here, than we were in previous years? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Daria Safai from Belgium.
Thank you so much. As we speak, a European state neighboring the EU is being attacked by rockets and drones provided by the Ayatollah dictatorship in Iran. Russia has been provided with 8,000 Iranian Shahed drones and 200 Iranian Fatah ballistic missiles in their attack on Ukraine. Moreover, servicemen of the Iranian regime are present in Ukraine, training Russian specialists in handling their systems. In case of a future Russian aggression against a European NATO member state, Iran will once again actively support this operation. And last but not least, the Iranian regime is already an active participant in hybrid warfare against our alliance, ranging from sabotage and targeted killings to cyber attack. Hence my questions for you. Will the alliance take this threat seriously? If so, are plans being made to address a possible armed support from Iran to Russian aggression on European ally? Thank you.
Thank you, Daria. Joanna Rostowska, Poland.
Thank you very much. I'm in the middle. Thanks. Now in Poland is debate about how similar or dissimilar will be war between Russia and NATO country compared with war between Russia and Ukraine. We will see what will happen, but I have no doubt that we need some things. Do homework from the Ukrainian exercise, from the Ukrainian front line, the first. Refresh our thinking, I am thinking about the NATO countries, yes, our thinking about what the war is, how weapon we need, how we cooperate to win the future war. And the next, because we are under hybrid war, I think that we need new thinking about intelligence service, about this kind of role of this intelligence service to do a lot inside the NATO. And my question is, it's new command, thinking about it. Thanks.
Very good question. No, first to Jesse Klaver's question, totally spot on. When I became Prime Minister in 2010, and I thought for the European Union it was about the market and the currency, and NATO absolutely clearly need it. However, there was also this thinking that the situation with Russia was so much more stable in 2010, 2011, so we could continue getting the peace dividend in, and therefore not increase, even decrease defense spending. For me, the big moment was in 2014, not only Crimea in March, but particularly, as we in Holland, in the Netherlands, have all in those days felt, was the MH17, and then Russia and all my dealings with Vladimir Putin flatly denying any involvement in eastern Ukraine. Not being present there, he said, so I can't help you, Mark. And I say, well, then I have to accept your view on this, but at least you speak the language, you know the people better than I do. Can you help to get the next of kin back? Because the bereaved ones want to be united with their loved ones. And this for me was was really a moment where I started to realize that the European Union, first of all, is not only about market and currency, but also by working together, 27 countries being embedded, as the Netherlands, one of the richest countries in the world, but very small, being embedded in such a structure is also providing a form of collective safety, maybe not security, because that's NATO, but the fact that you work together helps to, you're not standing alone. And then, of course, for NATO, the hard defense spending, and luckily over the last 5 years, we were able, also with support of your party and others, to increase defense spending to a more acceptable level. But clearly, it's not nearly enough, and we have to do much more. But that is what we all now have to face, other than 3 or 4 countries who are already there. So I think that's at least my personal journey on this. When it comes to the question from Daria Safai, thank you so much. As I said before, Iran is working together with Russia, with North Korea, with China. These 4 are closely knit. They help each other, and they all 3 help. So Iran, North Korea, China are helping Russia in the war effort against Ukraine. And clearly the most powerful in that foursome is China. But Iran, exactly as you said, is helping with some key drone technology, the Russians, in the war effort. And that needs to stop. And what the US is doing at the moment, also bilaterally with Iran, to come to hopefully some understanding with that country, I think is important, and I completely support what the American president and his team are doing there. By the way, also with Syria, I think it's good that the deadlock was broken on Syria, that also there now the talks are ongoing, and of course we have to take that step by step, and it will also always, because of the type of process we are in, it will not be a fast process, it will be slow, but it has to be done. And then on the question from Joanna Kluzik-Rostkowska, thank you so much for that. First of all, basically 2 questions. One is, we have to capture all the lessons from Ukraine. And in Poland, we have now JTEC, opened in February by Radmila, the Deputy Secretary General. She was there with the leaders of the Polish Republic, and this is very important because we will capture the lessons from the war in Ukraine. And we know that Ukraine is at an extreme speed innovating. The Russians are trying to keep up with a sort of delay of 2 or 3 weeks. They copy what the Ukrainians are doing, but the Ukrainians are extremely industrious, innovative, and this will give us so many new insights in how war fighting will develop. And I'm not a general, I'm a Secretary General, but I'm not a man in uniform. So obviously it is first of all the military people who will capture the lessons and then also advise us, the politicians, how to best take forward all these insights when it comes to defense procurement, when it comes to reconstituting our own armed forces going forward, taking lessons from Ukraine. And on hybrid, and Poland is of course has to do with it, but all over NATO we are seeing these attacks, and basically hybrid sounds very cuddly, but it is state-sponsored terrorism. It is we really have to call it what it is. What happened in 2018 in Salisbury, here, sorry, not here, but in the United Kingdom. What happened with the attack on the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, the postal system in Belgium, jamming of commercial airplanes in some of the Baltic republics, but also assassination attempts. We have seen all of that, and we call it hybrid, but of course it is much more. And that is why NATO is now so much more active. And for example, the cutting of critical undersea infrastructure, and the fact that this Baltic Sentry was established in only 10 days by Chris Cavoli, our Supreme Allied Commander, after the 25th of December, when that attack took place between Estonia and Finland on this critical infrastructure between those two countries. And what I learned from this is something is an activity. You do not always need consensus by the 32, so that's when I decided on the 5th of January, from now on, we will only have activities and no missions. But this is a joke, of course, otherwise I get into trouble with our ambassadors. But it shows you that we can react fast, and we have to keep on doing that, and not always to do exactly back what they do to us, but sometimes also asymmetrical. And the fact that the Russians are now really getting more and more active in the East Sea / Baltic Sea, whatever we call it, but of course it's the same sea, is testimony to the fact that NATO is really getting its act together of course with our allies.
Thank you. Now there will come questions from Greece, Turkey and Croatia. We'll start with Dimitris Kairidis, head of the Greek delegation.
Thank you. Here I am, here, to your left. Yes. My question was partially answered, but only partially, so allow me to insist a little bit. As a parliamentarian, Mr. Secretary General, like everybody else in this room, my first and foremost job is to listen to the voters and to try to respond to their anxiety. So allow me to reiterate a question that has been asked to me time and again by voters and journalists in my home country. And this has to do with the fact that you come from a country that even today does not spend 2% on defense. The Netherlands is an important country. It has a large economy. It counts a lot. It has an economy the size of the 10 smallest economies of NATO, so it's not unimportant. And the fact that there was a shift in your thinking in 2014 makes things a little worse because you remained in office until 2024, way past 2014. So I wonder, for all the forcefulness and persuasiveness of your arguments to increase spending, how do you respond to your critics about that, given the fact that the Netherlands is probably the one country in NATO that can borrow the most easily? It has a very low public debt of 45%, and even after the second invasion of Ukraine, it continues to spend less than 2%.
Mr. President,
my country spends more than 3% despite its problems.
Mr. President,
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
I will now give the floor to Sevilay Selenko.
Sorry, Mr. President. Mr. President, here's Jesse from the Netherlands.
Sorry?
Sorry. Sorry that I'm interrupting, but my country is
Jesse, just one
no, something is...
I think that Mr. Rutte will be able to answer that.
Yes, but our country was addressed in a way that was false. The Netherlands is spending 2%. The Netherlands is spending 2%.
This is not a debate with you, okay? Thank you. Ms. Sevilay Selenko from Turkey, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Turkey, an important NATO ally, is at a historic turning point. After decades of conflict, weapons are being laid down, and a new democratic chapter is beginning in the country. This new democratic awakening and the associated opportunity for peace is not only important for Turkey, it also has the potential to bring a positive peace for the entire Middle East, and therefore also for Europe. So my question is, what role can NATO and the NATO PA play in this context to promote and support this peace process? What steps could be taken, and how could greater international support help to ensure to success and long-term impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Sevilaj. Now I will give the floor to Dario Hebrak from Croatia.
Here. Mr. Secretary General, in light of commemorating the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Accords, I would like to ask you now, how can we help today Bosnia and Herzegovina to be effectively set on a sustainable path towards its future NATO and EU membership? The sustainable path, especially in the context of the current situation, where the anti-NATO and anti-EU sentiments fuel the secessionist movement. So my final question, how can we help as an alliance to Bosnia and Herzegovina's path? Thank you so much. First to the question of Dimitrios Karidis. The Netherlands is spending 2% and next year will spend 2.2% in all the NATO calculations. So I'm happy they're there. We are there, I'm there, Netherlands is there, and of course that, and my previous answer still stands, but luckily over the last couple of years we were able to redress that. When it comes to the Turkish question, and I think there are three issues, three opportunities here. First of all, the leadership role Turkey is taking when it comes to Syria. I think that's extremely important. I had long discussions with President Erdogan on this. Secondly, Turkey, when it comes to defense industrial production, you have a huge defense industrial base. And I'm in close contact with the secretariat of the Turkish defense industry, working closely with the presidency of Turkey. And one of the things I'm really promoting is for NATO to be as open as possible to all the defense industrial companies, because we need everybody. And there is enough money to make sure that all the defense industrial companies within the EU, outside the EU, here in North America and Canada and the US, that they all can flourish. But obviously what we want is more output and not higher prices. You know the joke, the Patriot system will be delivered in 10 years. Is it in the morning or in the afternoon? Why is that important? Because in the afternoon the F-35 will arrive. And this is only the US defense industrial base, but it could make the joke for Rheinmetall, for Leonardo, for some of the defense industrial companies in Turkey, because we really have to force them to put in the extra production lines, the extra shifts, speed up the production, particularly when it comes to ammunition, where Turkey is working closely with some of the ammunition industries here in the US, in Texas.